This video shows how I plan and create a typical episode of the Magic Lantern Time Machine, Keystone 600 series. In this episode, I will take you through the initial process from slide selection to image editing. Creating each episode starts with the Keystone 600 guide, available from the Internet Archive. It contains 600 plus pages of information and lecture guides for the 600 series. Starting from slide number 1, I select between 15 and 20 or more slides based on their geographical location. In episode 1, I selected the first 24 slides, covering the New England states. I transcribe the slide numbers and descriptions to my project master list. The project master list is used to track the progress of each slide through cleaning, photography, cropping, image repair, resizing, and pre-video image layout. The equipment I use to capture the images of each slide is as follows. A small, portable tripod that can be used on a tabletop. A Panasonic video camera with 20.4 megapixel still capability. A flat panel light box with 3 selectable brightness levels. A piece of foam board that covers the light panel with an opening cut slightly smaller than the slide size. It is held to the light pad with small clamps and marked with guide lines to allow quick positioning of a slide. Window cleaning wipes cut into small squares at the time of use. Soft paper towels torn into smaller squares for drying after using the wipes. Here is the hardware, assembled and ready to go. The software I use consists of the Photos application in Windows, the Paint.net application, and, for compiling the final video, Cyberlink's Power Director 365. Ideally, any drag and drop video editor will work. The process of creating an episode consists of 4 major steps. Pre-photography cleaning, photography, image processing, which in itself has 1 major step and 6 minor ones, and, finally, compiling the video from the completed images. Each lantern slide, selected for an episode, is cleaned on both sides and examined for damage, in preparation for photography. Pre-moistened window cleaning wipes and soft paper towels are used on each slide to remove decades of finger marks and a gritty film that seems to have accumulated on the reverse side of many slides over the years. With the camera mounted on the tripod over the light panel and set to take still photos, the camera is zoomed in to focus on the area of the pre-marked opening in the foam board. The camera is centered over this opening to avoid any parallax or skewing of the shape of the slide. The camera has an internal grid of lines, visible only on the screen, to assist in the aligning of the slide. The slide is carefully aligned with the grid in the camera. Depressing the shutter button halfway focuses the image. Each slide is photographed 3 times. First at the lowest light level, then again at the mid and high light levels. This process is repeated for each of the slides in the master list for the episode. Once completed, the images from the camera are transferred to a folder on the computer, labeled RAW, for the next step, image processing. Image processing itself requires multiple steps and uses both the Photos application and the Paint.net application to prepare the image for inclusion into its final place in the episode video. Those steps include image selection, a first rough cropping, image adjustments, image repair, additional image adjustments if needed, final image sizing, and finally, adding the finished image to the pre-sized graphic background, along with the descriptive text. Image selection. Using the Photos application, I can page through the raw images from the photo shoot and determine which of the 3 exposures of an image looks the best. The selected image is then renamed from the camera given number to a name that reflects its slide number in the Keystone series. Unselected images are moved to another folder. Each of the selected raw images is then processed, one at a time, using these 3 steps. Rough cropping, image adjustment, and image repair. Rough cropping. As you bring each image into the Photos application, select the Edit function in the upper left corner to start. Images are initially cropped to remove extraneous parts of the image, such as areas outside the image boundary. Top and bottom margins are shorter. Adjustments can be made if the image seems out of alignment. Side margins are a bit wider than top and bottom margins to fit the final format better. Final sizing of margins takes place later in the Paint.net application during the resizing and cropping steps. Image adjustments. The next step is adjusting the image. Brightness, exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, and since the images are black and white, desaturation, to remove any age-related discoloration in the emulsion. Once I am satisfied with these adjustments, I move to the Filters menu to see if I can punch up the image just a little more. In the Filters menu, I can audition several different types of contrast settings and tones, without permanently affecting the image, unless I keep one of them selected when moving on to the next step in the process. Whether I choose one of these looks or not, when I am satisfied with the image, I move on to the next part of the process. Image repair. Despite cleaning of the exterior glass, many of these slides have artifacts that have crept in between the glass layers over the last century. Some have flaws in the emulsion and even in the glass itself. Some have barely visible, snowflake-like growths between the layers. And, even with sealed edges, almost all have dust inside as well. In order to present the clearest image possible, I can spend up to several hours per photo using the erase function. When used carefully, the erase function utilizes a bit of AI to clean up artifacts while keeping important image elements intact. Here, moving the circle over some dust and clicking starts the removal process. The size of the circle can be modified to clean larger or smaller areas. Using the mouse wheel to zoom, You can use the erase function to get into much smaller areas to clean up artifacts. Be aware, using a larger circle in the erase tool can sometimes leave artifacts of its own requiring extra passes. Once all of the raw images have gone through these 3 steps, it is time to switch to the Paint.net software. In Paint.net, each image will receive additional, optional adjustments, undergo final image sizing, and, finally, be saved as a PNG or JPEG file in the cropped folder. In Paint.net, additional exposure and adjustments can be made to the image, if necessary. I have found that the Paint.net application level adjustments are often identical to those of the Photos application, meaning that these level adjustments may not be necessary. As always, it is entirely up to you to determine the final look you want for the images being shown. One great thing about the Paint.net application comes in the Effects dropdown. There, the Photo Sharpen function can bring clarity to many of the old images, if used sparingly. In the upcoming second video of this series, the fully prepared images will be inserted into a separate Paint.net file, which has multiple layers for the images and text. In order for these images to fit the templates of that file, they must be resized to a standard size and then saved to a different folder, the cropped folder. In a previous step, the border around this image was approximated, but left wide enough to be trimmed during final image sizing. My original images are roughly 1700 plus pixels by 1500 plus pixels in size, before these last resizing steps. These final steps will prepare each image for insertion into the templates used in the next video. First, each image needs to have somewhat consistent borders. I start by using the Select tool to establish the boundaries of the crop inside the border. I drag the Select tool inside the border from upper left to the lower right where I want the corner to be. Once I establish the lower right corner, I release the mouse but keep the pointer at the same position. Then I click again and drag back up to establish a more even upper left corner. Then I select Crop to Selection to complete the change. With the borders made smaller, we can now resize the image to fit the templates for the merge in part 2 of this series. The final image size needs to be at least 904 pixels high. We begin by selecting the entire image, then selecting Image, Resize. In the Resize dialog, set the height to 904 pixels and the resolution to 96 pixels per inch. With the image changes completed, you can now use the Save As function to save the image to the folder identified as cropped. Since starting this project last year, I have taken on a new hobby. I am now doing cutting and engraving with a tabletop laser. One of my first projects has been to replace the old slide template. I have now created a new dual template for the 2 different sizes of slides in my collection. And I have even added covers to keep stray dust from showing up in the images. Thank you for watching this process video. Part 2 of the process will be shorter and cover the merging of images and text into a Paint.net template to create each view in the video. Part 3 will cover the video editing of the final product.